to WWSU 106.9 FM, Fairborn Dayton, Dayton's the right choice. Hopefully, we're actually on air now. We're having a bit of technical difficulties in the studio. Looks like we got it fixed. Um, Welcome to Deconstructing the American Dream, the show where we explore the ideologies and the social constructs of the United States of America and just society as a whole. Um, our first episode today is going to be exploring just kind of the whole concept of what is this American dream, what is this ideal. Again, I'm your host, James Naylor. In the studio with me, I have some lovely guests which will help me on my journey today. Guests, if you want to introduce yourselves.
Hi, my name is Samantha Leal. I am a student here at Wright State. I'm a double major in medical laboratory science and vocal music. It's my last year here. I'm here because Jamie wanted me to speak as the daughter of two Filipino immigrants, and I was born and raised here in America. So
She forgot to mention that she's an amazing opera singer. I'm sorry, Sam, you have to
ignore
mention
him.
that. This is true.
Ignore him.
Hi, my name is Jean-Michel Lamoine. I'm an instructor of French working at Wright State University since 2015. I'm actually a first generation immigrant because I just became an American citizen in 2020, I believe. And I've been, let's see, I mentioned that I've been working for Wright State since 2015.
Awesome, folks. So, kind of as I mentioned at the top of the show is really just to talk about kind of our different structures and our ideologies. It's a conversation based show, although sometimes we may be talking about different like newsy topics like we will next week. But the question I want to pose to the guests kind of in the studio here in the moment is what does the American dream kind of mean to you? When you first hear that phrase, kind of what is the first things that kind of pop into your mind?
Well, I mean, there's the general like stereotypical like you know, move to America, build a house, earn a lot of money, getting a new job, and then climbing up the social ladder. That's like I guess, the generalized version that I think my parents had grown up with, like America as a land of opportunity and just better than the country they were living in. And, because the opportunities at the time, I think, in the Philippines before they immigrated was limited as there was a how do I say this? There was a revolution. There was a dictator in the Philippines from like their time of birth, like in their childhood, growing up into adolescence, and then they moved out as adults after the dictator was overthrown. Um, and so they saw America as a place to sort of escape all of that um, chaos and find like a new life for themselves. And for me, it's always sort of been like that. Yeah. But for me personally, like growing up with the Filipino and the American culture alongside each other, I think right now my version of the American dream is just building a life that future generations can be proud of, and just a nation that all of us can be proud of. So,
This is beautiful.
thanks.
Um, the image of America I had was transmitted by my parents. They were alive during the Second World War, and they actually witnessed the liberation of France thanks to the courageous American soldiers and other soldiers, of course, from Canada, the UK, even some French soldiers and soldiers from Africa. And my dad always had a very deep, and my mom as well, but my father remember seeing American soldiers going through the streets of my little village at the time and saving us from the Nazis. And this is, I guess, where my vision of the United States came from. So about freedom, justice, about people courageous enough to save other countries from dictatorship and from evil.
That's really interesting. I guess I really didn't introduce myself much either. I was born, here in the United States. I was born actually here in Ohio. Been here my entire life. I do come from an Italian immigrant family, but from hearing you guys' stories, it sounds like your guys' families came from a lot of conflict and a lot of war, and you hear that with a lot of different stories and a lot of different families. And it's interesting because America was also built out of conflict. We separated, the whole American Revolution and whatnot. So I was just wondering if we could, kind of talk about that and kind of how conflict may have, shaped your kind of expectations and visions, and how that, affected you guys.
Well, I think my perspectives were passed on to me from my parents, and their perspectives were passed on by their parents, who also lived during World War II. They were children, but they were definitely alive when the Japanese took over the Philippines. And I definitely remember my grandpa and my grandma like telling me stories about how they would send off children actually like as messengers during the war, to like pass on to the villages. They're the Japanese, and they really appreciated and liked the American soldiers who came and like rescued them. I guess that's what they, grew up with, and like the whole thing of General MacArthur, leaving the Philippines and saying like I will return, and then he did return. So they grew up with that idea of like an America that is like that has saved them, that has made them a better country, that is responsible for their freedom, because they gained their freedom after World War II and after America said, the Philippines is free now. We're out of here. So that, like, my grandparents' perspectives definitely was passed on to my parents, because then my parents gave me the perspective of, like, oh, we moved to America because, like, we wanted a better life for, like, our children and future generations. Like, because after World War II, there was obviously a lot of power struggle in the government. And that's why a dictator was able to take power. And so they grew up with, like, a lot of political conflict. And I think that's kind of reminiscent of how America became a country. I feel like America's built on the idea that mm, we can escape conflict and become a better nation. Like, I think it's sort of like hardwired that Americans are like born out of like conflict. So I think that's just how I feel about it. That's how I grew up with it.
Hmm.
So
And to kind of follow up with that, you know, in the geopolitical sphere, the U.S. is kind of seen as like the white knight, this kind of savior, and that sounds like it's kind of coming through on that end. So now that you're here, do you still kind of see the U.S. as like that white knight and kind of as that person who can, not that person, as rather that nation that can kind of persevere through conflict and that can still, you know, come out on top each time?
um, growing up with both cultures, I definitely feel like America, it's not the only country that has the power to do this, but I believe it does have the power to do it again. But I also think that because of like past historical events like the Cold War, and then, obviously coming up 9/11, like that changed everything. And then the birth of the internet and social media. I feel like the country is in a sort of conflict again. Um, but like, it's funny because I feel like we're in conflict, but also we have so many like opportunities for connection to one another, which should make us more united. Um, but I feel like America has the power to, maybe be that white knight again, that white knight in shining armor. But also, I feel like it's not ready for that right now. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Jean Michel, your thoughts?
White Knight, absolutely. I mean, as I mentioned before about the Second World War, I mean, we can also talk about the First World War. And also, you were talking about conflict, and France and the U.S. had always this very deep relationship since the creation of this nation, with Lafayette coming over here and helping. Um, I agree with Sam because I like the fact that she mentioned the Cold War, because people forget, I think, that Europe was in the middle. And remember, when I was at a young age, we were counting the missiles on one side of Western Europe, and looking at the missiles that were supposedly aiming toward us, because we thought the battle would occur in Europe again. So, and the U.S. were definitely the white knight in shining armor. And I still believe that if a country can save the world, it is the United States. It has the means, it has the power, and I think Americans are generous. I think that's the best word I can find. They are generous, and I think that they are willing to put everything on the table just to save the world. Honestly, I really believe that, and I don't think any other country can do this.
Wow, that's really interesting. That's really powerful. Um, we've also, I feel like, even more recently, seen a lot of conflict, internally within the U.S., just between different ideologies, different groups. Do you think that the same kind of kindness and the same kind of conflict resolution that we have kind of shown the world, do you think that could apply to, our own internal conflict?
That's a difficult question. I think, well, one, I think the reason for the conflict is um, America obviously was made of many underrepresented groups. From its conception, um, America came along with the Pilgrims, but it also came along with slaves. So I think that those groups, like those underrepresented groups, minority groups, are finally um, finding, like, really solidifying their voice within the American population. And maybe maybe that might be the reason for conflict, like, LGBTQ, Asian, African American. I think we're all finally, like, finding ourselves in that, like, idea of the American dream. And I believe, like, we should all be a part of trying to mend those past, like, broken histories, and maybe try to right some wrongs. I don't know if that's the right, like, metaphor to use, but just to, like, grow better and to try and be inclusive, while also thinking about, how America may not have always been, like, a great country to its own people. Um, but I feel like it definitely can use its, like, idea of the American dream. Like, I think it can use that to apply to everybody in the country. And I feel like if we just try to understand each other, then we can end up in a better place than we were yesterday. And I feel like that is definitely possible. I know we're going to get there. Like, I know we're going to get there. I don't know if I'll be alive to see it, but I know that it will get better, because that's what America has always done. It's always gotten better, generally speaking. So, I mean, I feel like, yeah, America can heal itself.
I agree with Sam that I think a lot of underrepresented groups are kind of coming up and trying to claim, and I don't know if it's the right word for that, but there's definitely a movement. I think the U.S. Is a little bit in a transition period right now.
Yeah.
But I am optimistic. I think that good will prevail, and I think the U.S. will be as amazing and good as it has always been. I mean, not always been, maybe, but I'm optimistic in the movement. But again, it's whenever things are making progress, there's always a kind of a counterbalance movement, counter movement to this. I think this is totally normal. but I think at the end, I think it will. It will. Yeah, I'm confident that things will end up for the best.
Hmm.
Honestly,
It's also just hard to tell because, you can't tell when you're living in history. You can only tell
yes,
afterwards.
yeah,
So, you
That's
know.
such a great point because like I feel like so many people are like, "Oh, what now? What this? Like what can we tell?" It's like we can't really tell, you know? Like we're in such a crucial moment in time right now with everything that's been going on in the past couple of years. It's like we can't really tell where we're going. But I love the optimism. Sorry, stumbling over that oh there. And I find that the more people I talk to, the more optimism they have because they also kind of have this ideal and kind of hold that, America like can walk through conflict and can kind of prevail. So, I feel like sometimes we always hear like about, more the conflict or more the bad things, but when you talk to people, one on one, you'll hear more of the positive and the hope, which kind of leads me. I hear no one has said it directly. Well, I kind of said it there of kind of the idea of hope. Even yourself or your family is coming over here. There's kind of a sense of hope there. There's a sense of hope for the future and for building up this dream. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about this kind of idea of hope and kind of what that means to you.
my goodness,
I
this
need
is
to think.
this is a very big question. Thank you,
Yeah,
thank you,
go
Sam. I
ahead.
appreciate that. Um, idea of hope. Yeah, I mean, first. You have to be hopeful. Otherwise, why fighting the good fight if you're not hopeful? You want the result to be as positive as possible. So you know, otherwise, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna just surrender and just let it go?
Hmm.
No, of course, I could make an easy French joke about French people surrendering, but which is not true. But anyway, but yeah, I think the idea of hope. I think the idea of hope permeate this country, and I think that's the United States' strength is to be hopeful in a brighter future, and I see that constantly, and I think that um, nobody should ever forget this idea of being hopeful and just looking straight to the future with good intent and hoping for things will get better and better and better no matter what. And I think that whenever the U.S. is the weakest, if it's ever weak, it's when this feeling of hope is not there anymore. And I
Hmm.
think this is no, the U.S. is remain and will be a hopeful country and will achieve again and again and again great things.
Hmm. And what was some of kind of your hopes for coming here when you were initially thinking about it?
I saw coming here as a liberation for me, even if my country is one of a democracy, which is still very healthy. I think I would say it's just this idea of freedom of being able to do whatever you want to do things differently, and not be judged in what you're doing and what you're trying to do. And I think that sometimes my native country kind of forget a little bit this point. That you should let people be what they would like to be, and because it's only that way that you can be successful, can be happy and successful in life.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that hope is sort of one of the foundations of this nation. Like the Pilgrims immigrated because they hoped for a better life. Um, African Americans created spirituals because they hoped that their lives would be better. Um, I think that hope absolutely permeates the American psyche in like so many ways. Even now, we are still hoping for ourselves to be a better nation. So I think hope is one of those like characteristics looking to the future, especially that America going, and along with that comes like different ways of like fighting for that hope, and also just being kind, because if you are kind to one another, then like you just have more hope, I feel. So yeah, I think
Mhm.
that's how I feel.
What are some ways that you guys kind of fight for your beliefs and fight for that hope?
Well, my whole job is based on that, honestly. If I was not, I'm a teacher. I'm an instructor here at Wright State. I was a teacher in different institutions all over the United States. And, I leave for the betterment of people. I mean, I'm teaching French. And, well, this semester I'm actually part of this new class called Diversity, Democracy, and Inclusion. And,
Ooh, that sounds
yeah,
fun.
I know.
I'm like, why didn't I take that?
Because it didn't exist until this semester. But as a teacher, this is. I mean, my parents were both teachers, by the way. So I got the virus at a very young age, and teachers, no matter what, they are hopeful. They want to give the tools to their students so that they can face life and being happier and learn more things, so they can deal with any crisis. They can also um, get some amazing opportunities. I believe that learning French can open the gates to a lot of different great career choices, not only in the United States but also abroad, and do great things with a foreign language. I really believe. Otherwise, I would. I don't know if I ever told you that, but I study business and finances, so I have a master in business and finance, but it was not my calling. I could have, make probably way more money doing that, but teaching called me. I cannot tell you this, but I mean, this is what happened to me, and I want to be on that path, and I want to help my students as much as possible to learn. Learning for me is everything.
Hmm. And I find
Hmm.
it super interesting how you still love your language,
Yes.
love your culture,
Yeah.
love your country, your like home country, but also still kind of went for that American citizenship and
Yes.
see kind of as liberation. Uh, Talk to me about those. I'm curious if you guys want to talk to me about those like dynamics like that you have like between kind of your like relationship with your native cultures and in comparison to your relationship with the American cultures. Um,
Yeah, that's a real complicated question.
It is a very good question
Yeah.
too, though.
Well, it's really strange. When my parents immigrated to the US, of course, they wanted to assimilate, because they were definitely judged for having accents. Sometimes they still are, and it kind of sucks. But, I think I grew up with like learning Filipino culture and learning American culture at the same time can be disorienting. Like, for example, like dating is a very, very serious, especially when you're a teenager in the Philippines. Like, dating is serious. You take it seriously. And in America, it was like, kids start dating when they're like 13, and it's not really that serious. So I would get really confused when like my friends would be like, Sam, why don't you have like a boyfriend? And I'd be like, well, I don't want a boyfriend yet. Like, why would I want that? And then, like, in high school when I actually had a boyfriend, my parents were like, why do you have a boyfriend? You're so young. Like, you can't do that. And I was like, I don't understand. Like, it's sort of like, how do I exist in between these two, um, like, different worlds? It's almost like a balancing act that you have to tiptoe on. I like tried to explore that with my music degree. I did a recital last semester that focused on being Filipino American, and the Filipino culture is very influenced because of the multiple colonizations by the Spanish and like China a little bit. It's influenced by Catholicism and just the uh, East Asian perspective. So it was very like family centric. Like it's family over everything. And in America, I feel like it's definitely more of an individualistic sort of perspective. So like you'll be happy. Like everything like converges on you. Like your decisions are yours, just yours. Like you can't judge a person, or you can't judge a person's family based on their decisions. But like, it's sort of different growing up in a familial centered and then also individualistic centered, and trying to find your way in between that. So the relationship between those two is like I'm trying to synergize it still, because I feel like I'm still young, but I would definitely run into some like, issues with
Some
that.
awkwardness. Just be like, ugh, how do I navigate this?
Yeah. And like it's weird. It's so strange. Like I know I was born in America. I'm an American, but it's weird to go to a school or to go to like a school event and somebody asks you if you're an immigrant because you knew how to pronounce that one Filipino song in choir. Like that happened to me once. I remember this was all state choir. This was like at like Ohio's big music convention. There was a piece that was in Filipino, and I didn't know what the words meant because I didn't grow up understanding the language. My mom sort of kept that from me because she didn't want me to have an accent or to be confused by learning two languages at once. So there was this song in Filipino. I knew how to pronounce it because I'd heard it enough. And so I pronounced it in front of like more than 100 people. And then I remember going back to my seat, and this girl who was sitting in front of me turns around and she said, "Hello." And I said, "Hi." And then she says, "I just wanted to know, are you like a transfer student?" And I was like, "Why?
Oh.
Why would I be a transfer student?" She's like, "Well, some other girls and I were talking, and like we thought that maybe you were a transfer student from the Philippines because you could like pronounce that language." And I was like, "No, I was born here. I'm American." And she was like, "Oh, cool. That's what I thought because I thought your English sounded pretty good." And I was like, "Oh, thanks." I kind of just let it slide because it was like a spur of the moment conversation, and I was sort of taken aback by it. But you run into those things every once in a while, and then you start to question your own Americanness. Sort of, it's sort of hard to deal with those sort of things, but you have to root yourself in the beliefs that you grew up with and the people you grew up with, and like say like I am American. Like my difference is me being different is what makes me American. That's why Americans moved from Britain. That's why the Pilgrims left Britain in the first place, because they wanted to be different. So I have to just keep reminding myself that even though that there are these two like vastly different cultures that I was a part of, I'm still American in all of that. So, yeah.
That's a good perspective to have. That's an interesting perspective to have. Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh my goodness. Well, my relationship with U.S. and living with two different cultures is a little bit different because I moved. Excuse me. I came to the U.S. when I was 27 years old, so that means that all my childhood and teenage years and so on were all spent in France. Also, that was a conscious choice that I made to come to this country. It's not always easy to work, to live with two cultures, because I always say I still have one foot in France, and even if now I'm an American citizen, I have one foot in the U.S. And no matter what, these 27 years, will always be there, and will always be part of my culture and my identity. However, I didn't have to face any of the things that Sam faced because, I was an adult when I came here. I say that I managed to pick the best of both worlds, meaning that I'm able to choose what works for me the best in both cultures, honestly. Like food, definitely. I'm sorry to say, but food definitely.
French food.
Nothing can
would
beat
agree with
can
that.
be no, nothing can beat croissant for me. But again, I was raised in France, obviously, so of course I have to be biased. I think movie-wise, I'm going to disappoint people, but I love American movies. I like those big, crazy, fantastic movies. This is also one of the reasons I came to the U.S. because I loved not so much the shows, but I love the American movies. I think they were I just they were fascinating and amazing. Like Steven Spielberg, comes to my mind. Is for me the best director ever. I will watch any of his movies at any time. But yes, I think that makes it easier for me to pick and choose and to organize my life around this. I mean, I am married to an American, so sometimes there's some difference of opinions, especially about food. but yeah, it works. Honestly, it works. It works for me. I don't have any. I still have an accent, as you can tell, probably. When I was because when you use your language on a regular basis, no matter what, you will not never you lose your accent. It's just not possible. And speaking French to my mom, she's in France, and speaking French to my family or to some of my friends, that just keeps my French fresh, and teaching French, of course. But so that I will never lose. But I still hope I understand. People can understand me.
I can understand you, so I
Yeah,
don't know.
I'm like, what? We're good.
I was like, I
Thank
think we're
you.
okay.
Okay, thank you,
It's
thank you.
funny because like I have a speech impediment, so everyone thinks I have an accent and like questions like my origins because of my speech impediment. So whenever anyone mentions accents, I like to talk about that because I'm like, huh, like I don't know why like people get so hung up on that, and I'm like, people just sound how people sound. Like I
Yes.
don't.
Yeah.
I don't know why people get hung
Yeah.
up on that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know you had a speech impediment. I never ever
I
realized that.
I mean,
And
like,
I was your teacher.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I like sort of did, but I didn't want to assume anything. And also, I didn't think you had like an accent. Some people thought you had an accent.
Yeah, I get all the time like, "Oh, where are you from?" Or and then I'll be like, "Oh, I'm from Ohio." They're like, "No, where are you born? Where were you born?" I was like, "Cincinnati." Like, I don't know, like Ohio. Like,
And some people ask me that too.
really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Like since elementary, people have asked me that.
Yeah. Like,
I-
where are you from?
Yeah, they'll ask me, "Where are you from?" And then I remember in Spanish class, one kid was like, "Well, don't you speak Hispanic?" Not Spanish. They said, "Don't you speak Hispanic?" And I was like, no. I was like, it was in 5th grade, so I was like, no, I don't think so. But yeah, I get those sort of questions, so I sort of get it.
When you guys get awkward comments, like kind of the person that you were talking about at the choir concert, or when people ask about your accent or things, how does that like make you feel, or like kind of what goes through your head, or how do you, yeah.
Well, first is like the initial shock of like trying to like absorb everything that was just said to me, and then there's like the gut feeling of like getting like angry that I was like pointed out as different, and then there's like the okay, maybe they just don't know any better, so like just take it in grace, and if they continue, then I have a problem with it. But if it's just like a one time thing and like they don't know they did something wrong, like then I just sort of let it slide. But if the same person keeps making ignorant comments and they don't learn from it, that's when I start to say, hey, maybe you like shouldn't say that, or I don't feel comfortable with you saying those sort of things, or trying to have them understand why that's not necessarily correct. Like I've gotten like comments on like some strange ones that I'm still not sure how to take, like your skin is the perfect color. I've gotten that before, like where somebody was like, I just wish I had your skin tone, it's so perfect. And I was like, well, hey, like I don't know, my genes or my genetics, what am I supposed to say? Thanks, genetics. Like those sort of questions make me like, I just think they're sort of funny at this point. But I've definitely like gotten other comments before. My high school actually made me take an English test to make sure I could speak English.
Ooh.
Oh my god.
Yeah, they did. They were like, so your parents spoke a different language, and so we have to make you take this English test. And I was like, but I don't know how to speak a different language, so can I just not take the English test? And they said no. So I took it. I was kind of mad about it, but I think things have improved by now. Like even that was like 8 years ago now.
Mhm.
But I do think that like it's improving. So I think we just have to learn from our mistakes as a nation and just keep moving forward. Like, I think that's the only way that this country is going to heal itself. Um, so yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I laugh because I have a French accent. I will never get rid of it. I know this. Usually I emphasize it and I will say like, "Hello, my name is Jean-Michel. How are you doing today?" But that sounds like the chef in The Little Mermaid, the cartoon. And like, oh, I add. But in all honesty, that makes me laugh. The only thing that doesn't make me laugh is when we're trying to pronounce my first name. Because as you know, it's Jean-Michel, which is, it's
Jean.
written like Jean. So they usually call me Jean Mitchell or Jean
Oh.
Michael. And I die a little bit inside when it happens to me. I'm just like, oh.
Jean Mitchell.
So usually now I just say, my name is John. So whenever I go to Starbucks, I say John.
John.
That would be easy. It's way
Jean.
easier. Jean.
Goodness. And I find it so fascinating too how you guys can face that. How you can still face those comments and still kind of face those, kind of being pulled out and still be so helpful, like so hopeful about like the US and be like so positive about it. Like that's such a cool perspective. Like I don't know, because I feel like, as, a person who has, born here and only really has the American perspective, when we see that, we're like, that's not cute. Like, we're not that hopeful when we see people that are different being treated like that. And then you guys are like, I laugh it off, or even though this person made this off comment, I just continue about my day. Like, that is so cool and interesting. And it shows, like, you guys talked about our nation's resilience, but I think that also shows your guys' resilience to pick up, for you, Jean-Michel, to pick up your entire life and to move to a completely new country, at 27 years old,
Make it sound like I was old. Thank you.
I mean, at any age, it could be really difficult. And then, for you, Sam, for your parents to come here and then to grow up in these two different cultures and to navigate that, I think that shows your guys' resilience just as much, if not more,
You kind of just have to. You have to keep going. Like, you can. That's like sort of a way of fighting. I think you fight with kindness. I don't know if anybody's seen like Everything Everywhere All at Once, but like fighting with kindness is sort of the premise of that movie. So that's you just have to, like, that's just part of life. You can't let adversity or let a little comment or let a bunch of little comments that turn into a big comment like define you. You have to make people understand, and if they don't want to, then like that's up to them, but you have to just keep moving forward. I think Walt Disney said that. I don't know. I know somebody said it. Somebody important.
I like that. Keep moving forward. I would say also the resilience, for me, the resilience of American people. I mean, it's really interesting for me to see how strong-willed, can I say that,
Yeah.
Americans are in front of adversity.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't think life in the U.S. is always very easy. On the contrary, I think it's really, really hard sometimes. And people just keep fighting and she can keep going. And just, that gives me a great lesson. I still remember one of my students, I mean, she's just finished this summer. And she always used to put a little smiley face on her messages. And I just, because of her, actually, I just, thanks to her, I just started to do it, to put little smiley face everywhere. And I agree with Sam. Kindness is, I think kindness and understanding are the keys to everything.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Alrighty, before we wrap up, very important question. Favorite movie? Lightning round. We mentioned it
Oh,
quite a few
man.
times.
Favorite movie? You go. I have a lot of
I'm
movies.
gonna. It's not a Steven Spielberg. I'm sorry to say, I'm gonna disappoint, but it's The Empire Strikes Back. I'm a big Star Wars fan.
Okay,
This
that one's a good one.
that movie
Yeah.
is amazing to me. I watched it maybe like 40 times.
Oh
Wow.
my god.
I love it. I can't help myself. It's perfect. Not a the ending is not good. As you know, spoiler alert for anybody who has not seen that movie, which is like 40 years old. One of the main character is a prisoner, has been frozen. Another one lose his hand and learn his dad is an evil person. But I just love The Empire Strikes Back. It was not George Lucas actually. It was Irving Kirchner who directed it. But I love that movie.
Good pick. Good pick.
Thank you.
I think the movie that comes up right now, just because of the experience of watching it, is Avengers Endgame.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
That sounds really like dumb, but actually, like I went to this like early premiere of Avengers Endgame, so I was in a room with a bunch of geeks and nerds,
Okay.
and the screams throughout the auditorium, like that was the
Yes.
best like film experience I've ever had. Like just the hype energy throughout the whole room. I remember like Tony Stark like showed up. It was like 5 years later. The 5 years later, everyone, oh my god, it's 5 years. And then when like what's his name? Black Panther stepped out of that like portal hole thing.
Yes.
Like the whole crowd, it was just screaming. I couldn't even hear what they were saying. Like it was just noise, and I was like, "Whoa, this is awesome!" And then when Steve Rogers, he's finally like Avengers, and then he like says assemble. I didn't even hear the word assemble because everybody was just wild. Like it was just screaming and jumping. Like people were jumping in the air. There was popcorn thrown on me, and I was kind of mad about that. I was like, "What the heck?" But this guy like stood up next to me, and his popcorn went everywhere. And I was like, "You know what? It's fine. We'll just deal with it. We'll just keep that energy was so great." So
Yeah, the American movie experience really do be hitting different. Like we be insane. Like people dress up for movies over here. People like be shouting and yelling. Like people be doing the most over here. It's honestly the best thing ever.
I
plug
agree.
for the Barbie movie, because
Yeah.
the Barbie movie, everybody was dressing up for that,
Oh, I
including
loved
me.
it.
So and it was
Oh,
good.
I
it
was
was
wearing
good.
pink. I
Yeah, yeah.
I went there.
Love to see it.
Yes.
Oh goodness. Alrighty, folks. So this was the pilot episode of Deconstructing the American Dream. As you could see, it was more like I kind of like to do these more like an interview session. I have a background in journalism. I am a journalist. So if you like this show, if you like these topics, tune in next week. Instead of Wednesday, we will be doing this on Monday on 9/11 or September 11th. Our topic will be on the September 11th incident, terrorist attack that happened here in the U.S. So tune into that. But before we hop off air, and I think they're our guests for their time, any final thoughts?
Oh yeah, I wanted to shout out my
Yeah.
I wanted to shout out my medical lab science classmates. If they're listening, maybe they are, I'm not sure, but we're working on becoming like the next generation of medical lab scientists, the people who do the COVID testing, the people who made the
Yeah.
COVID tests, testing your blood every day to make sure you're not going to die anytime soon. So
important.
I'd like to give my class a shout out because I really love that group of people. So
Shout out to Sam's class. All right.
Shout out to all my students, the past and the present, and I wish you the best.
Alrighty. Well, thank you both so much for coming in and talking to me about your experiences and about your life. To my listeners, thank you so much for tuning in this afternoon. Again, I will see you next week, and you are listening to WWSU 106.9 FM, Fairborn, Dayton, Dayton's right choice. See you next week.